Hello and welcome to this episode of the MediaTech podcast. Today I am joined by my wonderful wife, Gabby. How's it going? Good. We've had kind of a long day. This is kind of an emergency podcast we had to put together. Unfortunately, the guest that we were going to have is sick today. But I thought it was a unique opportunity to get both of us on the podcast and answer a question that we get fairly often from the students here at MediaTech, and that is, how do we create so many videos so quickly? But before we get to that, I want to invite you to subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you're not on the YouTube channel, make sure you go over there and subscribe there and hit that bell icon. We do lots of great content, tutorials. We do interviews with former graduates about the awesome things they're doing in their careers. The list goes on. We do lots of cool stuff over there. But let's dig right into it. First, I want to talk about our background a little bit. Gabby and I have a company called Pedal Car Creative, and one of our main clients is here, MediaTech. And I got involved with them first by being a student, which I graduated from the Dallas campus, which is where we are now, in 2013, I think, for the film program. And shortly after that, Eric Jewell, the head of the film program here in Dallas, hooked me up with a connection he had to a local advertising agency just down the street from the campus here. And they needed a video editor at the time. And they're a very small advertising agency called Bedford Advertising. And they focus, or their specialty really is, or was at the time at least, car dealership commercials. And if you've ever been inside that world, or really know anything about advertising on a small regional scale, you know that the turnaround on TV spots for places like that is ridiculous. I was shooting and editing 5 or more spots a week on average, which is quite a lot, obviously. And they were all heavy motion graphics, like in front of a green screen with lots of animations and things. And you know, you might associate a lack of quality with car dealership commercials regionally, but I think they have a niche that they produce a lot of times, like really good looking stuff. So the standard of quality was very high, and that's where I really cut my teeth in learning to produce videos from pre-production all the way through to post and delivery on a very rapid scale. And that's kind of how my career grew from there. If you want to learn more, check out the links in the description for a couple of YouTube videos. But I think it's fair to say that I dragged you into this, not the other way around.
Definitely.
Excuse me. So following the advertising agency, I worked full-time at a local company managing their media department, and continued to get faster and faster as a videographer, video producer. But on the side, we had a couple of opportunities for freelance that really took off, in addition to a couple of YouTube channels that we were maintaining just for fun. And between my job professionally and then the videos that we created together, we were producing 4 or 5 videos a week on average. And so that's kind of how our business started and grew from there, with a focus on social media and producing content for different companies for social media. We focus on producing content for brands specifically. And we took it full time in April of this year. We're recording this in 2019. And now we're up over 30 videos a month. Yes. Which is kind of insane. It's kind of, it's every time I really think about it, it's like, man, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
It doesn't feel like a lot, but it is. And between the two of us, Gabby is more of a producer role. She works with the talent of the people we're working with, locks down locations, makes sure that everything's getting delivered on time, etc. And then my job, for the most part, is like shooting and editing and the actual technical work. So let's go through our entire workflow on a project from beginning to end, and kind of go through our roles and just how we produce at such a rate. So for MediaTech, we do a lot of like interview-based things or like mini doc stuff. And for our other client, it's a whole wide range of different things. But let's say that we're producing a MediaTech graduate, so involving a highly produced interview and B-roll and stuff. So what would be, from the get-go, your first interaction with that project?
Reach out to the person.
The talent.
establish exactly how much time we would need, because it varies from project to project. A podcast, maybe an hour to set up and tear down. An interview, maybe 3 to 4 hours.
Depending on it, yeah.
To do the full interview, and that includes setting up, doing the interview, and then shooting B-roll, and then tearing everything down. And then establishing the best, most convenient place for the talent in order to shoot the interview. Usually it's at their workplace.
A lot of times it's here.
Like, it just varies.
We're at the Dallas campus, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Right. And it varies, if we're shooting at a studio, if it's a, if we're shooting it in a studio, I have to, figure out the time and carve out that time, reserve the studio. It's sometimes the talent says they're available and then is not actually available.
Which sucks.
Because
that happens. Like, it's nothing against, when that does happen. But let's back up a little bit. So before we even start a project, we have, between our clients, a pretty rigid upload schedule.
Yes.
So we know, like, for instance, MediaTech, we upload every Monday and Friday and usually every other Wednesday. And then for our other client, it's it's a little more, but it's about the same. It's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and occasionally some extra stuff for both MediaTech and the other main client that we have. And that's not counting some smaller clients that we have. And those will push us over 30 to 35 videos. But being that we have that schedule, we know, 7 Wednesdays from now is going to be a graduate, or, we could even trace it further than that. Like, we have a vacation coming up in 6 weeks. So we know exactly what's going up until then and then after, so that we're preparing. So a lot of times we will look at that schedule and be like, man, a grad you did 6 weeks from now. We have one in 3 weeks, but we don't have the talent in 6 weeks. So we'll go and look for one. And then that's where Gabby takes over and reaches out to them and makes sure that they're available. And then the thing that is really tough is that they sometimes, people just by various circumstances won't be able to make it work. So like, we'll have it planned for 6 weeks ahead. And then that day, sometimes they're like, oh crap, something came up, which is tough. And excuse the sound going on around here. We're in an active classroom. But a lot of this is being super flexible and having plan Bs and plan Cs and plan Ds, for just about everything. So at 90% of our stuff for MediaTech specifically, or just in general, is shot locally in the DFW area. Maybe a little less because we do go to the Houston campus for MediaTech every 6 to 8 weeks or so. But we also travel occasionally. Probably, I have no idea what that sound is. Again, I'm sorry. So like, for instance, we just shot in Atlanta and Las Vegas on one trip. And that's tough for you, I can imagine. Like, working, you had to work with CNN directly for several weeks to make sure that we had clearance.
Yeah, I mean, and there was always that chance that they were going to be like, you know what, this is too much.
Yeah, I mean, their security is super intense.
We're just not interested. And then, and then what? Like, you're in it, like, you're planning, a shoot in Atlanta, and you've never been to Atlanta. Like, so
it's tough. I mean,
it's where do you shoot? And, it has to make sense with, the person, that you're shooting with. And he was a sound engineer. So like, you couldn't just put him in a park and like interview him, or, like, it has to make sense. And if you're, trying to figure that out in a place that you've never been, or you have no idea,
it just comes down to a lot of prep. Yeah, a lot of prep and a lot of research. So like, I'll literally like go to Street View a lot of the times before we go on travel trips.
You live on Street View.
Well, just because I like to know where things are, and I look around at like, oh, that looks like a great plan B location or something, and so we would never, like, for instance, fly to Atlanta, especially when it's something as intense as shooting inside the CNN headquarters, without a firm backup plan.
Yeah. And coordinating with CNN, it was difficult too, because they were very vague, and so it was, we had no idea where they were gonna put us for the interview. Like they could have just stuck us in a conference room or in a, a storage room or something that, would have just been like a very bland background.
Just a regular room.
Fortunately they put us on this like beautiful balcony overlooking all of
the
CNN.
Whole headquarters. Check out that video in the description.
But, like we didn't know, and we had no control over it.
And I don't want to sound like we're throwing shade at all. They were awesome to work with.
No, they were great.
But yeah, I mean, it is stressful when you're spending so much money to go somewhere, lugging all this gear with you, just about breaking your back to do so sometimes. And then you're not 100% sure on if it's going to work out.
Right.
You've got to have a backup plan. And then that also brings up something else that we do, whether we're traveling or shooting locally, is making sure that if you have a shoot planned in advance, get as many other shoots planned at that same day and location as possible.
Be efficient.
Yeah, you have to be very efficient. So like today, we're shooting this podcast, but we got here early for me to go do some B-roll with a student for another project, and then I was able to grab some other footage for a third project. So that's this podcast, plus I'm able to finish those other 2 projects just by shooting some stuff today.
Yeah. Well, we don't like sitting around and waiting.
You can't. I mean, when you're producing literally on average a video per day or more every day.
Right. I mean, it drives me crazy when I'm sitting waiting. Like, so while you were getting B-roll and, for the B-roll and then for the other project, I was up here setting up for the podcast. So by the time you got up here, like we were ready to sit down and like hit record.
So question for you. What if the person that's listening to this, what if there's a person that's listening to this that is interested in producing or wants to learn how to produce at the rate that we do, but they're a one-man band?
I'd say it takes time.
Yeah.
Like, don't expect yourself to just magically be able to juggle all of it. We feed off each other a lot.
Yeah.
And we bounce off each other a lot. Like there are times when, you're the one that has to reach out to the talent.
Yeah.
Or then you'll, like you're too busy, so you'll pass them on to me. Like you have to, like I would almost say that like the most important thing is being organized, and from there you can grow into almost anything.
Absolutely. And I want that to be a common theme of this episode is organization, from the minute that you think about a shoot to the minute that you post it and it's done.
Yeah.
Organization is super key.
Write it down. If you're thinking about it, write it down. There are times where we're thinking, we need to do 3 videos this week, and it's and we have this, and if we don't write it down, it goes out the window.
Away.
It goes out the window. And you're moving so fast that you have to write. Your brain can't just keep all that information. Write it down, because if you write it down, your brain kind of remembers it in a stronger way.
Also keeping your calendar straight.
Keeping your calendar straight. We have like 4 calendars. We have a Google Calendar. We have my planner that I always carry around. We have a whiteboard in our office that we write down every single project that we have ongoing, and then the status that it's in and the date that it's due, the date that it needs to be uploaded, or the date that it needs to be sent for revisions. Mm-hmm. That way it's in our face, like all the time.
Yeah.
You can't escape it.
Absolutely. And I mean, that being said, you do have to have a mental capacity to be able to remember a lot of stuff. I mean, you write stuff down and keep it in your calendar, but you've got to make sure that you keep it straight in your head, or else you're going to just lose it and you're going to get burned out. But so from there, from pre-production, let's move on to production. First, let's get the boring or very exciting thing out of the way, depending on who you are, is the gear. I highly recommend that you use one lens system if you're using multiple cameras. You don't want to be fumbling around with different lenses that only fit certain cameras. And then a lot of the times if we hire another shooter or Gabby who isn't as well versed in gear as I am, you don't want to get someone in a confusing situation of, this lens doesn't work on this camera or whatever. And not only that, but if you're a one-man band and you're planning on always just shooting your own stuff, just making sure that you have a single lens system that covers all of your cameras is so important because it keeps everything organized. You have a lot of flexibility if you have to change cameras around. Like if one dies on you and you forgot to charge or something else happens, the camera goes down, you can just throw another lens on it without having to worry about it. So I highly recommend one lens system. We use Panasonic cameras. A camera is GH5S, our B camera is a GH4, and our C camera is a G7. And we have a variety of different lenses. And that's another thing. Make sure that you have a good range of lenses to cover wide through tight on, like, to be able to, if you needed to have like a tight lens on all three of your cameras, like make sure that you're investing in the gear that is going to fit all of your needs when you're running and gunning, because if something goes down and you're going to have to fight to get it back up or use another lens or camera or something, you just got to make it as convenient as possible for yourself. We also shoot in all 4K, even if the delivery is not 4K. That's a slight personal extravagance of mine. I like just shooting in the highest resolution possible. We don't usually shoot. It's really nerdy, and you could skip ahead a couple minutes if you'd like, but we don't usually shoot in the highest bit rates possible. We usually keep it at between 100 and 150 megabits per second, which is great for later on when we're importing, because it doesn't take, although it does still take up a lot of footage being that it's 4K or a lot of space, it doesn't bog your system down too badly. But also for the podcast, we do it very simply. If you're on YouTube, you can see it. We have a couple of Audio Technica microphones going into a Zoom H6 recorder. We don't use an audio interface or computer or anything, just because we need to run and gun. If we need to set up a podcast, it takes 3 minutes.
And those vary sometimes. We have to improvise that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, depending on where we are. Or, I mean, occasionally, especially when we're traveling, like across the country, we literally, I know it sounds bad and it looks bad, but it sounds like the actual quality is fine, but we literally don't have time sometimes to even set up this setup. So we will put one of the microphones on the Zoom, it comes with a couple of built-in microphones that you can swap out, and we'll just record it straight on the Zoom, and it sounds fine.
Well, I mean, it's you have to be efficient, and when you're traveling, we travel with all the tripods we rent, but we
rent them when we're traveling domestically. But if we're traveling locally, we have everything.
Well, we have everything, but I'm talking if we travel, like for instance, for Nashville or Atlanta or Vegas, we travel with on us the camera bag. You have a camera bag, I have a camera bag. We have lights. We have, it's a lot. Suitcases,
going through the airport sucks.
It's a lot, and our podcast equipment is kept in its own bag, and it's like 1,000 pounds.
It weighs like 60 or 70 pounds because the bases on these stands weigh like
the bases
15 or 20 pounds each.
The microphones, the cables, like all that, and it weighs a good amount, and it doesn't make sense, to lug all of that around to do a podcast whenever we get the one podcast, and so we have to be efficient. So you know what? Bare minimum is the Zoom and the microphones, and if it sounds great and it looks great, then what's the problem?
Exactly. Like you gotta
save yourself.
So that's another thing that I have a problem with personally, is because I'm a huge camera nerd, is I would love to shoot on like a Red or something, because
I know.
Ever since we met, I've been begging her to let me buy one, but it would make no sense. Although it would look really good, and in all honesty, it would look better than the GH5S that we use. You're not going to tell a difference when it comes down to it, like when it's on YouTube or whatever. And as long as you find a camera that has the quality and the footage that you need or that your clients need, you don't need to go super insane with it. And so make sure that your camera system is reasonable for the amount of stuff that you're going to be shooting.
And diverse. That was a big thing, is that when we were looking for our third camera, I think it was, you had to make sure that it was, for our other client, we shoot a lot in low light.
Yeah.
And so we had to make sure that, is it gonna, is it a good video camera? But can it also do, is it also good in low light? But
exactly.
MediaTek doesn't always shoot in low light, so it has to look good in both ways. And sometimes you can't get them both to the level that you want, so you have to find a balance. You have to find in between where they both look the best that they can without breaking your budget.
Exactly. And so we arrived on the GH5S for that reason. That's just my personal favorite camera in that price range right now. We are planning on switching to Sony's at some point in the next couple of years, but it'll be a while. We'll be on Panasonic for a little longer. But boring stuff out of the way, let's talk about editing. So we edit everything on Adobe Premiere and After Effects. We have considered switching to Resolve. At NAB this year, we were super impressed by their editing capabilities. They're really getting better, but we use After Effects too much, that on the rate of production that Resolve, the benefits that it would give us wouldn't be worth the slowdown. But we are going to have a series of 120 episodes, which are the tutorial videos we produce on the YouTube channel for MediaTech. And those are going to cover the way that we organize our projects digitally. But the number one thing when it comes to the actual projects, like the editing projects, is templates. Make sure that for each client, even if they have different needs, that you have a template for each one. So like on my computer, I have a folder called project template. And within that, it has all of the folder structure that I like. And it even has Premiere and After Effects projects all ready to go with just a generic name that I can rename to the project. And within those Premiere and After Effects projects, it has all of the stock footage that I use on a very frequent basis. It's all ready to go. So that's key, because I used to, before I had the idea to make a project template for After Effects and Premiere, I used to create a brand new project every time, which was super time consuming because my folder structure, I have like 10 different folders and I have to import a bunch of stuff. It took like 5 or 10 minutes for every project. And when you're doing 30 or more projects a month, that's like 5 hours of time.
Yeah. Also, you're very organized. I think that's a skill that really does help digitally, which I think is a massive help whenever you're producing this many videos.
Yeah.
Your file saving is very impressive.
Well, thanks. So let's get into that. So a service that we offer our clients, that I suggest everyone offer their clients, is footage backup. Is that all of the footage and also project files and everything, like everything that we generate for our clients, gets double backed up and that never gets overwritten. So we have a whole archive system. So when I import my footage, the first thing I do is copy it to my backups, which is 2 mirrored drives. And then also all of the project files and other things get backed up to those as well. And then when they fill up, again, that's 2 drives. I just pop them out of the RAID. One goes to a storage facility and one stays in our apartment. And then I have a whole spreadsheet that's super detailed with everything that Gabby maintains. So whenever I'm done with a set of backups, she'll go through it and she'll catalog everything that's on that drive. And so very frequently, at least once a week, I'll need something that I may have shot a month ago, or even occasionally I'll pull stuff that are a few or more years old, just because I need a specific shot of B-roll that on our schedule I may not have time to go shoot, and I remember that 500 projects ago we shot some clip of Dallas that would be great. So all I do is open up the Excel sheet, search that project name, and I follow it over to whatever drive it's on, and then I go pull it out of archive, and I have it within 5 minutes. And that's a great thing too for clients, because like with a couple of times we've shot weddings, and the bride or whatever might want our footage, years later, and we have it. And
there's been instances too where like, a random like former small client will be like, I just need like, I just need a video like edited, and it's like, okay, well, we need time to shoot, and you have footage from, however long ago. Could you just edit that together?
Which we can, and a lot of people can't,
Right. Like we have it, and there's no issue with like, okay, well, now we have to meet with you, put it on a hard drive, make sure that it's, the right kind and that the right quality. Like there's none of that. We have it. We can, and that saves us time. It saves them time. They don't have to think twice about it, which is very, very worth it to them because they just, they know we have it.
They just know we have it. And that being said, like I said earlier, we shoot in all 4K. We typically burn between half a terabyte to a terabyte and a half every week.
Well, yeah.
It's a lot because we shoot our podcasts in 4K, which again, if there's going to be any comments, it's going to be, why do you shoot podcasts in 4K? But the vast majority of our stuff we shoot in 4K because we deliver in 4K, and we have no other options. So the backup drives that we back up to are 2 4-terabyte drives. So that's 4 terabyte. We buy 2 4-terabyte drives every 4 to 6 weeks because that's how much we're burning, and then we archive those 2 drives.
It's a lot. It's definitely not the most convenient thing to do,
but it's so
worth it.
Absolutely.
Whenever whenever the time comes that you do need it, you're going to be grateful that that you have it.
And especially for social media, I guess there's a train nearby. I didn't even know that there was a train track nearby. But especially for if you're producing stuff for YouTube or Facebook, like social media in general, you're gonna have a time where you're going to need to include footage from a previous project. For instance, one of our clients, they were building a new facility, and we walked through it when they purchased the building, and then walked through it again when it was done. And so he referenced, oh yeah, this, the stage used to be over here or whatever. We pulled that out, but I can just go back and find that footage or just the final project if I want, and it takes 5 minutes, and I can include that footage in there rather than having to dig through or, God forbid, download the file from YouTube, which is a horrible process. But anyway, so I know that it seems like a huge hassle and both a time suck and a money suck to back up your footage and keep all of it forever, but it will make you faster in the long run. I know it seems counterproductive, but it will. And then I suggest, if you're working really quickly, to be on Adobe. I'm not sponsored or anything by them, but the way that their programs work together, all the flaws that system does have, it does save a lot of time, where I have, an After Effects template that I can just go ahead and update or whatever that I might need to, a lower third or intro or something, and then I can just import that composition into Premiere without having to render it, which the render times for some of the After Effects animations that we have can sometimes take forever. So that's a really, really good way to save time. And then do not cheap out on the editing computer that you're going to have. I've made that mistake. There's literally no way that we could produce the amount of videos that we produce if our computer could not export stuff very quickly. Like an hour-long 4K podcast, color graded, takes 30 minutes on our machine to export, which our last machine, it would literally take 12 to 16 hours. And we produce at least 2 podcasts a week, so there's no way that we could have done it.
It's definitely helpful. At the time, it was what?
Yeah, at the time, because we knew that would be a problem, and we knew that we'd have to buy a computer, but it was between a low-end iMac or the top-end one, and we chose the more expensive one, and it absolutely paid off. Yeah. There's no way that we could have done it.
Well, and you doubted it yourself. You were questioning whether we really needed it. And I think you do that a lot.
Yeah. I'm very financially conscious.
Yeah, which is great, but where I come in is that I know that, yes, in the long run, in the short time, it's going to be cheaper, but I know that in 6 months you're going to be I need a faster computer. So it's I would rather, and I always tell you this, I would rather you get the equipment, pay that little extra amount if it's doable for you. Don't stretch yourself too thin.
Don't max out your credit cards.
Don't max out your credit cards. But if you're in between, a little bit of a difference,
get the thing that is going to last you. Get the thing
that you know is going to last you, that you are going to actually, not question whether it's worth it in a couple months. Get what you need, not just to scrape by, but
Absolutely.
that you can grow into.
And that really goes for gear across the board. But lastly, I want to talk about reviews. So with the 35 videos a month, I'd say a solid 2/3 of them need to get approved. Some with the other client and most of them with MediaTech. And so it's important to have a system that is really easy and lightweight when you're dealing with clients, because you don't want to take too much of their time. And then you also want to make the revisions that they do have and the requests that they have. You want to make sure that they're clear and easy to understand. And the best way that I've found to do that is with a system or a website called frame.io. Again, I'm not financially affiliated with them in any way. I just really love them. What it allows you to do is create a folder for each project, and it keeps track of the versions that you upload. So if you make a change, it's like version 2, version 3, and you could easily go to it. But the coolest thing about it is that when you send a project to a client and they're reviewing it, let's say they have a note about a shot at like 1 minute and 30 seconds, they can tag that time. They can make a comment and tag it specifically to that time in the video so that there's no question what they're talking about. And not only that, but they can also draw or circle parts of the frame. So if they want me to paint something out or whatever, it's easy. Like before then, my system was just uploading videos on an unlisted link to YouTube, which for reasons that we'll go into, I'm sure, in another podcast, make sure that you minimize the amount of unlisted videos on your YouTube channel because it takes the whole channel down in terms of analytics. But that was a factor, right? So I didn't want to, I would have to have a burner account to upload all these videos to. So it was like Matt Bedoni reviews or something that was just for clients. But it was tough because sometimes they'd have a comment that was like, paint that green thing out. And it's like, what green thing? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And it's nothing against them because they're so busy, they don't have time to fully explain, and they think they're being clear. Right. But you may not understand what that is. Right. So a service like Frame.io, there are others, I don't have any experience with the other ones, but a service like Frame.io where they can literally circle on the frame and be like, I don't like this, or comment right when the person says the thing they don't like that they want to be taken out. It's incredibly valuable. And then also Frame.io, I don't use it personally, but they have an extension for Premiere and the other editing programs. I think that when someone does make a comment, it gets put as a marker at that time in your sequence. So you can just load up your sequence and it's automatically there. It's pretty cool. But I think that pretty much covers it. Is there anything else that we didn't cover?
No, I think the key things are to be organized, efficient, and
I think that's it, really. Organized and efficient.
Yeah, organized and efficient.
In that order, probably.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's just no way to do it without being efficient and organized. We would lose so much time. We don't live close to MediaTech. We have to drive. It's 30-minute drive, so that's an hour. If you count to and from
and
MediaTech.
that's assuming we're not driving in rush hour. Otherwise, It's like an hour or more.
And that's an hour or more of our day that we lose driving. So whenever we get here, we have to be efficient. We have to
not just here, but anywhere. I mean,
anywhere.
Most of our, I think our closest client is like 30 minutes.
Oh yeah, like our other client has locations in Fort Worth, Arlington,
and we live in the McKinney-Frisco area.
We live in McKinney. Like it's so if when we get there, we have to know what we're shooting, who we're shooting with, what time we're doing what, how long it takes to set up, and then hit the ball rolling.
Absolutely, and I mean. One thing I want to say, and this is might sound weird, but make sure you love this job, like making videos, or else you're going to burn yourself out. And even if you do love it, make sure that you don't work like insane amount of hours on it because you're going to burn yourself out.
You have a tendency to do that.
I do, but you also have a tendency to pull me back from it. I mean, burnout is a thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of YouTuber burnout, and I'm not saying that we're YouTubers because we're not, but people that...
It's producing.
Producing, yeah. Producing that much content can really burn you out and kill your creativity. And it's very depressing. Like it can be like you feel stuck in a hole. So you got to make sure that you're treating yourself with respect, I guess, and that you're not digging yourself into the ground. It's the easy answer is it might feel necessary, and it might be necessary when you're starting, your business, but make sure that you have a plan in mind to maintain your sanity.
Right. You need hustle, but you also need your creativity to do this job. So like if you kill it, then you're...
And the minute, honestly, this might sound conceited, but the minute that you lose sight of, like the minute that it's not fun anymore, you have a problem. Like you got to pull back a little bit and really evaluate what's going on.
But it's a fun job.
It is a really fun job.
And it's a rewarding job.
It is absolutely. But I think that pretty much, at least in a nutshell, a 32-minute nutshell, answers the question that we get, like I said, fairly often from students at MediaTech and elsewhere of how do we produce so much content. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment on the video on YouTube. And excuse me. If you're interested in a career in media, whether that's video production, audio, music production, they also have programs in acting, media, mobile app development, animation. The list goes on. Make sure you check out MediaTech. They have great campuses in Dallas and Houston. Make sure you schedule a tour the minute that you walk in here and see the amazing facilities and instructors they have. I promise you're going to be sold on it. So check out MediaTech.edu if you want to learn more. And thank you to my wonderful wife, Gabby, for giving me 30 minutes for this podcast.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.